Good day, everyone. I am Dr. Stuart Downs, a member of AORN and incoming chair of the AORN Fellowship Selection Committee. Welcome to our presentation today, Making Your Mark, Pathway to AORN Fellowship and Professional Success. I'm joined by a team of perioperative leaders today, including Carol Applegate, Larry Asplin, Dr. Joy Don Baker, and Dr. David Wyatt. By way of introduction, I have the honor of serving as the Senior Nurse Executive of Northeast Georgia Health System, where I get to lead a team of about 5,000 professional registered nurses across 5 campus sites in beautiful Northeast Georgia. I've been on the AORN Fellowship Selection Committee for the last 3 years, and I'm delighted to serve this coming year as chair of the committee. As a matter of business, I must let you know that none of our speakers today have any relevant financial relationships to disclose. Additionally, none of the planners for this activity have relevant financial information to disclose either. Our panel today, from an overview perspective, will hopefully help you envision your career path towards AORN Fellowship and determine the mark you personally want to leave on perioperative nursing and on AORN. Our learning outcomes are pretty simple. We're very hopeful today that you will leave this presentation with a greater understanding of the steps to achieve AORN Fellowship, and also that you will realize the effect of the AORN Fellowship on one's professional career aspirations. Our objectives today are to describe a pathway of professional growth to achieve AORN Fellowship, and to relate the steps to achieve this fellowship to attaining professional success for those who are interested in achieving this fellowship. Our session is going to be an informal conversation about how you can make your mark on the pathway to fellowship in AORN and illuminate your successes as a perioperative nurse leader. Our goal today is to inspire you, to motivate and influence each of you to achieve fellowship in AORN as a means of augmenting your professional career. What we want out of this session today is to have an in-depth discussion about how and why you as perioperative nursing professionals should expand your career aspirations by achieving AORN Fellowship, and in the process, perhaps consider how it might apply to your professional career growth. Additionally, we will describe the pathway to achieving the FARN credential and impart to you how to conduct a personal gap analysis for achieving this career milestone. I have had the privilege of working alongside most of our panelists over the last 3 years as the AORN Fellowship has evolved. So I've had a front row seat personally in observing this journey. These leaders will share with you personal stories, as well as provide insight into not only what it means to be a fellow of AORN, but how to get there. I'd like to start by having each panelist introduce themselves to you. And in addition to their current roles, I'd also ask them to provide a high-level overview of their journey in achieving the prestigious AORN credential. Let's start with Dr. Joy Don Baker. Joy Don?
Thank you, Stuart. I've always considered myself a lifelong learner, and as such, I've earned 5 academic degrees, 4 certifications, and during the COVID pandemic, excuse me, I was awarded the AORN Award for Excellence in 2020. In addition, I am also a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. I was overjoyed to learn that AORN, the organization in which I have participated since 1976, was implementing a fellowship program. I was excited and a bit scared because one never knows the application will be accepted or not. I just had to take that risk. I've always enjoyed being part of something far greater than myself, learning, if you will, and grateful for the opportunity and ability to contribute by helping to advance persons or projects to achieve the targeted goals. For the past 24 years, I've been a faculty member at the University of Texas at Arlington, and in 2019, I began teaching writing for publication, capitalizing on my personal passion to help others disseminate their work to a broader circle of nursing, including the international perioperative nursing community. During the time I served as AORN Journal's editor-in-chief, selected articles were translated quarterly into Chinese and shared with perioperative nursing colleagues abroad. And now I'll turn it over to Carol.
Thanks, Joy Don. Well, I retired in 2021, and in my 50 years as a perioperative nurse, I've had the pleasure of serving as a staff nurse, an educator, and an administrator. My career spanned acute care hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, and medical industry, and my last position was the Network Vice President of Perioperative Services. My AORN experience includes multiple committees and task forces, and I served as the AORN president. I received the Award for Excellence in 1991. I am a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing and a fellow of AORN. When I heard about the AORN Fellowship, I decided to challenge myself at the age of 70 and see if I could be accepted. It was an opportunity to summarize my career in perioperative nursing and my contributions to AORN. And my colleague that you just heard from, Joy Don Baker, agreed to sponsor me, and I will sponsor her, and we worked together on our submissions. We were both privileged to be accepted into the inaugural class. Larry, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Carol. I've been working in perioperative care in the state of Minnesota for over 41 years, with the last 19 years in surgical services management. I have to say, I was about to retire when I was asked to become an interim manager at an area critical access hospital here in Minnesota, which I gladly accepted. That 6-month contract has become a 32-month opportunity and continues to be one of the highlights of my professional nursing career. I hold a master's degree in nursing and was awarded AORN's Outstanding Volunteer Leadership Award in 2023. I continue to strongly support certification and served on the CCI board for 6 years and continue serving on the AORN Foundation board, having just ended my 3-year term as president. Safety within the perioperative setting has always been a top priority for me from the first day I was in an OR, and I was honored to receive the Top 100 Distinguished Nursing Alumni Award from the University of Minnesota for my local and national involvement in perioperative patient safety. When I first learned about the AORN Fellowship opportunity, I was interested in learning more, to learn how I could continue to contribute to the lifelong professional career that I have chosen. And I'll turn it over to David. David, please.
Thanks, Larry. I'm honored to be here and participate in this session. I work in Dallas, Texas, at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center as the Chief Nursing Officer for the university hospitals. I've been a lifelong learner with research interest in how teams work together and impact patient outcomes. The interest in teams was ignited by my clinical experience in the OR, where I learned very early the importance of teams. I've been a perioperative nurse the majority of my 30+ years career in nursing. I'm a past president of AORN, serving the years 2020 and 2021. I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing, as well as a fellow of AORN. In 2015, I received the Award for Excellence of AORN. My service to and engagement in AORN has been a vital part of my career and has provided me with such great opportunities to make a difference in our profession. The AORN Fellowship was another avenue for me to ensure that I was giving back and contributing further to the mission of AORN, as well as the profession of perioperative nursing. Back to you, Stuart.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. Now let's delve into some specific questions, if we can, about the AORN Fellowship. And Carol, I'd like to start with you. You were an inaugural AORN Fellow, and you've also chaired this past year the AORN Fellowship Selection Committee. Maybe I think you've done that for 2 years now. Could you provide for us a high-level overview of what a fellow is? Tell us exactly what a fellow is as we share that with the audience today.
Thanks, Stuart. I think it's important to remember that the AORN Fellowship is not an award, but it is a voluntary and honorary designation that's bestowed by professional associations to acknowledge outstanding achievement in an area of expertise and contributions to that association. Now, just a little bit of history. The first nursing fellowship was established by the American Academy of Nursing, and we call that fellowship the American Academy of Nursing. It is 50 years old, and it is considered the pinnacle of fellowship in nursing. In the past several years, other nursing associations have also established fellowships, such as AONL, the Organization of Nurse Leaders, ENA, the Emergency Nurses, and our colleagues in peri-anesthesia nursing, ASPAN. And then in 2020, AORN established our own fellowship.
Awesome, thank you. Now I think we've kind of level set the playing field here. We all know what a fellow is, and you've given some great examples there. David, let's switch to you. You were president of AORN when the first class of AORN fellows was selected and announced. Can you tell us how was that fellowship established when you were president, and what was the intent of the board in doing so?
Thanks, Stuart. Yes, I was president, and I had the honor of awarding the inaugural class, of naming the inaugural class of fellows. They were selected and announced that year that I was president. The AORN Board of Directors initiated the work for the FAORN under the leadership of President Stephanie Davis. And it took several years and a couple of different work groups, actually, to outline that process according to the goals that were set by the AORN Board of Directors. As with anything new, organizations learn and revise and continue to improve. AORN did the same thing. We learned and we revised and modified those processes, all the processes that were associated with the AORN Fellowship. The goals for having a fellowship go beyond individual recognition. Fellows have a purpose, this purpose to continue to serve the organization through their expertise, serving, if you will, like a think tank. And really, it's this think tank or brain trust that honestly I'm most excited about for our future, for how the AORN Fellows will continue to serve and be this capacity for AORN. The reality is we have some very complex issues and challenges ahead for our profession. Having a resource such as the AORN Fellows serving with their expertise to assist as necessary will be a significant benefit to AORN and its members.
Yes, it will. I completely agree with you there. And I really love the analogy that you just portrayed in how the whole think tank analogy there. So it's a great job there. Appreciate that. Joy Don, you were already a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing. And additionally, you had already served as a member of the board of directors, vice president, and as editor-in-chief of the AORN Journal. You are also a recipient of the AORN Award for Excellence. So my question for you is, why did you pursue becoming a fellow of AORN, knowing that there were no assurances that you would be selected?
You're right, Stuart. One never has absolute assurance of acceptance. But I was so happy to learn that AORN had developed a fellowship. I didn't even really think about it. I had to apply. The one thing that is an absolute, if you don't apply, you will never achieve the fellowship. The process of learning through doing can be an invaluable experience. Although serving AORN has been a part of my life since 1976, one must understand that longevity of membership is not the criteria for fellowship. Instead, it is about serving through service, making a substantive and sustainable contribution. Applying for a fellowship is a personal choice that includes one's commitment to fulfill the responsibilities associated with the fellowship beyond installation. Fellows are responsible for helping others achieve this designation by serving as sponsors for future applicants, or by serving on the fellowship selection committee. Becoming a fellow means that you will continue to pay it forward.
Yeah, I like that. Continuing to pay it forward. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a few moments. Carol, I've only known you for just a few years now, and your legacy as a leader in perioperative nursing precedes you in so many ways. The impact you've had on our profession will be felt for generations to come, without a doubt. So this may be sort of a personal question, so forgive me for asking maybe a personal question here, but you told us how old you were a few moments ago. And so you were nearing retirement whenever you decided to apply to become an inaugural fellow of AORN. Why did you do it? And why did it matter to you to just have one more credential behind your name at the end of a long, successful nursing career?
Well, Stuart, you're correct. As I told you earlier, I was nearing retirement and I was 70 years old when I decided to apply. The decision was based on really several factors. Probably the primary one was that I'd been an AORN member since 1972 and supported it over all those years. And I've never backed down from a challenge. I also had the support of a friend and a sponsor who was willing to undertake this journey with me. And trust me, it was a journey. It took us back and forth. She read mine, I read hers, and finally we both agreed that's the best we can do. I don't think you're ever too old to contribute, and I hope that if I was accepted, I could lead the way for others who are like me. David noted the rationale for the AORN board in establishing the fellowship. And I do hope that as we mature as a group and we grow as a group, that we'll find more ways to contribute to AORN. And I want to still be a part of that.
And we're so glad you are. Absolutely, so glad you are. Thank you for sharing that personal moment with us right there. David, let me switch back to you. There's an age-old adage that reads in part, every long journey begins with a single step. And I have found nursing professionals who might consider becoming a fellow of RN, they may be wondering if it's really worth it. So can you describe for us the influential factors or maybe the decision points that really underpinned your decision to apply for fellowship in AORN?
Sure, Stuart. As with most everything, it started for me with one of my mentors. The power of someone reaching out to me and saying, have you thought about the FAORN? It's not insignificant. And honestly, whether I achieved the fellowship designation was less important than the recognition that someone I respected tremendously reached out to me to validate my impact. After that discussion, I had to do some self-reflection and understand that I would have to do the work. And as Carol mentioned, it wasn't insignificant. It's a fair bit of work. But I will forever be grateful for the time taken by that individual to reach out to me to validate. Sometimes we underestimate the impact that our encouragement has on others. For some of you, you already have these mentors. For some of you, you can't think of who that might be. Both scenarios are okay. They're actually quite okay. But I believe that mentorship is important for everyone. Sometimes it takes reaching out to find a mentor, which takes some courage. Other times, you need to play that role of a mentor to someone else, which also takes some courage for you to step out and encourage someone and be that voice. But that's really how it started for me, Stuart.
That's good insight right there. And that's really, really good. Sometimes all it takes is just someone believing in us and really helping to validate who we are as leaders and the effect that we've had on the profession. Thank you for sharing. Joy Dunn, I can't boast the privilege of attaining the FAORN credential, but I do hold 3 other fellowships. And in making the decision to pursue those fellowships, I often heard from my mentors that my work must have made a significant impact or have maybe had a measurable effect on the nursing profession. So is the same true for the FARN credential? And if so, can you tell us more? Does one have to have made a significant impact on the profession and or have some form of measurable impact?
Thank you, Stuart. And yes, absolutely. The FAORN is a recognition that must be held to the same high standards as other professional nursing organization fellowships. Each candidate for FAORN is recognized as a perioperative nurse who has made significant ongoing contributions in one of 4 areas of expertise: clinical practice, education, leadership, or research for the perioperative profession and AORN. This contribution through demonstrated commitment must have a sustainable effect beyond the local setting. For example, my desire to learn and to serve led me to volunteer for positions such as AORN board member and vice president. My contribution that had a measurable effect on perioperative nursing began with my service on the Data Elements Coordinating Committee, or DEC, and chairing the DEC Outcomes team. These leadership opportunities gave me a chance to participate in building a foundation on which others advance the perioperative nursing data set, or PNDS, a nomenclature. I had the honor of being part of that early development of PNDS, then writing and presenting on the topic down the road. And just look where the PNDS has gone today, nationally, globally, beyond my wildest dreams at that time. The PNDS describes critical elements of perioperative nursing practice. It was the first specialty nursing language recognized by ANA and SNOMED, or Systemized Nomenclature of Medicine clinical terms. SNOMED mapped the PNDS to other languages, and AORN has licensed it to software vendors for use with electronic health record systems worldwide.
Definitely a significant impact that is clearly measurable and a great example for our audience today as they look to see what their impact has been on the profession. Larry, since your introduction, you've been a little quiet here, so let's switch over to you. As you know, applicants, as Joy Don just mentioned, must have made significant contributions not only to the profession, but to the activities of AORN as well. And some of those listening today might believe that that means they must have been elected to national office. So what advice would you give someone as to how to articulate maybe their contributions to AORN? And what examples of those contributions would you give them?
Well, thank you, Stuart. I truly believe that we all have wonderful opportunities to make significant contributions to AORN and our chosen profession, both on a local, a national, and even international basis, as you've heard. It does not require a national election. It is as simple as dedicating your perioperative career towards making significant and sustainable contributions to perioperative nursing. And many of you listening today are already making these contributions. Articulating the significant contributions in one of the 4 categories of expertise, which we'll discuss in length here later, can be challenging, as there are character limitations, in other words, letters and spaces, but please don't let that deter you from applying. As Joy Don will be explaining later, be sure to include your most substantive contributions. Do multiple drafts, each time doing a character count, seek help from colleagues, and eliminate unnecessary words. So examples of contributions may include public recognitions, awards and honors, creating, sustaining a unique staffing pattern, maybe authoring papers, posters, podium presentations, all which are really creative and unique contributions to serve us as AORN members. One piece of advice that I do have for everyone is to be inspired at Expo by befriending members who demonstrate these substantive, sustained, and significant contributions of AORN and in perioperative nursing. I really suggest exchanging contact information at Expo and keep in touch. And that's exactly what I did many, many years ago. I purposely met with the national board members and others at Congress Expo, and I asked a ton of questions. It was their inspiration that really set the course for my ongoing AORN involvement, and I have many to thank for their guidance. And another recommendation I have is to complete those willingness to serve forms and become active on a national level. You will not regret it. You will have many successful leaders to assist you. And remember that also we need to submit a curriculum vitae or a CV with your submission for FAORN status. If you don't have one, please create one now and consistently update your CV. It works great.
Good advice. Good advice. David, let me flip back to you right fast. How will the FAORN credential assist a perioperative leader in his or her career goals? We would all say that you're a pretty successful nurse leader. So make it personal for us. How has it impacted your career?
Sure. Thanks, Stuart. As I mentioned earlier, a fellow credential, whether FAORN or another fellowship, it is an external validation not only of knowledge, like a certification, but of contribution. It's a signal to others that this individual perioperative nurse not only has significant knowledge, but has put that knowledge to use and has made a significant contribution to the profession. And so it's that second step. It's taking that knowledge, putting it to use, and ensuring that it has a significant outcome or contribution. As a chief nurse, I'm looking for nurses, whether at the bedside or in formal leadership roles, that not only have knowledge, but that are constantly making contributions to our profession. A fellowship is an incredible way to communicate that skill set and characteristic to others. I definitely notice fellowships. And when one of my team has been recognized as a fellow, whether in AORN or in their own specialty or the American Academy of Nursing, I know that they are an individual that I can count on to make positive contributions to my organization and our profession.
So true. So true. Larry, I got an additional question I'd like to send your way. When we put ourselves out there, sometimes we don't always achieve what we want. And so this is, again, sort of a personal question. And, your first application that most people don't even know about this was not successful. However, I know you are being very vulnerable here, but you applied again and you were accepted. So in terms of that, at that level of vulnerability, can you share with us what you think made the difference between those two applications? Tell us a little bit about that from a personal perspective.
That's a great question, Stuart. And I have to say that I had the opportunity between the two different applications to add to my curriculum vitae. So I really, again, stress the CV. It's sometimes easy to give up, but my heart and soul never lost my dedication and appreciation to AORN. As David just mentioned, I was not going to stop making positive contributions to my organization and profession. And notice my organization, we all belong to AORN. In addition, I was able to articulate my work as the interim manager of perioperative services at my Minnesota Critical Access Hospital, which helped significantly as well, because that happened after my first submission. This hospital had been without a surgery manager for some time, and I was given the opportunity to bring back standards and guidelines, AORN guidelines, ASPAN, the American Society of Peri-Anesthesia Nursing, and the standards that are associated with the Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation. So it was truly a pleasure to prepare my team here at this critical access hospital for all things that we do. Site inspections truly celebrate the good catches, development of a 5-year capital budget, and assist in changing the culture to a more positive one while supporting each other. And I have to say that each day of work here continues to be a true joy and has brought forward additional opportunities where I can continue to make a difference.
That's awesome, Larry. And I'm so glad you didn't give up. The profession needs you. And you said a couple of words there that really stuck out to me. And one of those was, I never lost my dedication or appreciation to AORN. So we're so glad that you did not give up. Persistency is key. David, one of my favorite actors, Morgan Freeman, he said once, challenge yourself. It's the only path that leads to growth. I guess one could argue that Larry, in his affirmation a few moments ago, challenged himself and that he was persistent and didn't give up in applying the second time. But what advice would you give to someone who wants to apply to the AORN Fellowship or maybe advance their career, but they just don't know where to begin? What advice do you have for us?
Sure. I think the first advice that I would have is to take on the action of conducting a gap analysis. And that is to look at where you are honestly in relation to where you want to be. First, think about your focus area. Similar to the AORN fellowship criteria, which is my primary strength? This is a question you need to ask yourself as you're doing this gap analysis. Is it as an educator, a clinician, an administrator, or a researcher? Once you know what your focus is, then think about what your future state would look like. For example, joining the heart team as a scrub, being the educator for your unit, serving as a team leader or a unit manager, or working in academia as a researcher. Once you have your sights set on what your future looks like, you start thinking about where you currently are and what do you need? Do you need additional education, certification, experience, or support to achieve that goal? And identify those targets that you need along the way to get there, those milestones and the end target. So for instance, in the journey to be a manager or an administrator, you'll need skills in finance and leading people and conflict management, project management, and other skills. And you may need an advanced degree depending on the role that you want to achieve. So then you start to create a path to get there. Will you need to go back to school? Will you need to ask to join a different team to gain more skills, to learn to scrub? Whether you are applying for the fellowship or seeking a new role, it's really important to develop a plan.
Yeah, develop a plan and that being a personal plan. Really like how you shared all that with us about that personal gap analysis, and then from those gaps, fill them in and help put those milestones in place to get you where you want to be in developing that personal plan. Great insights, Larry. In terms of significant contributions, as I'm developing that personal plan, maybe the applicant has 4 different categories from which to choose when submitting an application. Obviously the narratives must demonstrate a commitment to AORN's mission and vision and values. That's key, and that must underpin every single application. But can you tell us today, what are those 4 categories, and how should a potential applicant select a specific category when writing their application?
Yes, thank you. Well, as Joy Don mentioned earlier, those 4 categories of expertise include clinical practice, education, research or evidence-based practice, and administration or leadership. And candidates are asked to choose the most influential and impactful contribution or accomplishment that they have made within perioperative care and match that to one of these 4 categories. So the first one, clinical practice, simply describes specific innovations or contributions made to clinical perioperative nursing. And I have to say that one of the great examples is the development of the perioperative nursing data set, as Joy Don explained, the PNDS. That was the first, again, specialty nursing language recognized by ANA and SNOMED. That has improved outcomes for all perioperative patients. What a wonderful example. Education is our second category. That describes a candidate's development, expansion, or evolution in advancing perioperative nursing education. And that can be everything from publications to posters to podium presentations, both chapter and national, or webinars. And again, it's expanding that education to all of us at AORN, and again, towards better patient care. The next is research or evidence-based practice, and that describes the candidate's contribution for advancing perioperative nursing. And that can either be through research or being a translator and incorporator of research initiatives. And finally, the administration or leadership area of expertise describes a candidate's leadership role, and in particular, and again, you've heard this many times, but the important outcomes and accomplishments they have made to perioperative nursing. In my case, this was the incorporation of transparency with patient safety events. The area of expertise you choose also needs to include your planned future contributions to perioperative nursing and to AORN's mission. In selecting your area of expertise, I'll say it again, please remember that a curriculum vitae or CV is required on application, and AORN does provide a template within the application process. You know, I have to say, Stuart and team, that I strongly suggest that every perioperative nurse create a CV and keep it updated. And that's exactly how I recognize my area of expertise in administration and leadership. A review of my CV demonstrated that to me. So if you have not started your curriculum vitae, again, there's opportunities to learn more about that, and I would start it for everybody.
Great advice, great advice. We've made several references today about sponsors and mentors and their role in the application process. But Carol, let me switch to you right now. How does a potential candidate select a sponsor, and what is important about that relationship?
Well, Stuart, two sponsors. One is somebody who's currently a fellow of AORN. In the past, we had sponsors who might have been a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing or an Award for Excellence recipient. But as we've grown, we've developed enough of a cadre within the FAORN that they will serve as sponsors moving forward. Another must be a leader from your facility or someone who's familiar with your work. The FAORN sponsor could be somebody that you know or somebody that's selected from the list of sponsors that's posted on the AORN website. And although it's advisable that you're familiar with your FAORN sponsor, it is not a requirement. If you don't know any of the FAORNs, then get well acquainted with them through conversation and correspondence. And your first step is to contact them and share your CV. That CV keeps coming up, doesn't it? Something that's really critical. So from there, they may advise you on what you should do to amplify or clarify that CV. They will also want to know from you what is the area of expertise that you plan to write to, so they can evaluate that CV from that perspective. If you happen to be at Expo, please come by the FAORN table and meet with some of the fellows there. Get to know us, talk with us. If you're not at Expo this year, just reach out to us in some other way. The second sponsor, somebody from your work environment or somebody that knows you well and can speak to your accomplishments. It's not necessary that they be a nurse, but it should be someone in your professional circle or someone who's at least in a supervisory position. It is not advisable that your sponsor from your clinical area be someone who reports to you. Both sponsors need to collaborate on the submission. Their letters should complement each other but not duplicate each other. And remember, this is a partnership among the three of you. If your FAORN sponsor happens to tell you that you're not quite ready yet to apply, don't be discouraged, because they will provide you with feedback and suggestions for development.
Good explanation about the letters. Joey Don, as Carol just mentioned, the letters of support are crucial to ensuring a candidate submits a successful application. Tell us a little bit more about these letters and why they are needed to expand or reinforce the candidate's quest for fellowship.
It's a trifecta, if you will. A candidate's sponsor and leader have the opportunity and responsibility to reinforce the narratives of you, the applicant. The sponsor and leader each expand from their unique perspective on how your actions have made a difference for the profession and AORN. These letters should not repeat. Now, that's a repeating term that we've been talking about, what's written in your narratives, but it should be from their perspective about your accomplishments. Instead, they should enhance the specific area that you have as an excellence and address as your significant and substantive contributions.
Thank you, Joey Don. Good advice there. Carol, we're kind of deep into the application here. So I think this is good information for our audience today. Narrative alignment and demonstrated a clear and sustained impact in perioperative nursing is critical for one's application. And it's essential that applicant's CV also be aligned. So taking that into consideration, what does a successful application look like to you? And what tips can you share with our audience today that provides that reassurance that they are ready to apply?
The first word, that comes to mind is focus. Focus on your area of expertise that you think is your strongest and that can be supported by your CV, your narratives, and your sponsor letters. And all of those should be in alignment and highlight each other without being repetitive. For instance, if your focus is clinical, your CV then should highlight your clinical area of expertise with notations about your experience and your service and your contributions through publications, podium, and poster presentations. Your narrative should speak specifically to what you've achieved as an expert clinician beyond the local level. Because remember, you must demonstrate impact at the state, regional, national, or international level. Goodness, when are you ready to apply? Well, when you're confident that you've made a significant impact on perioperative nursing and on AORN, and that you can articulate that clearly in your CV, your narratives, and your sponsor letters. And I can't advise you strongly enough, please go to the AORN website and look for more information about how to apply. The committee's done a great deal of work trying to add to, amplify, and clarify the information that's out there. There's also an AORN link that you can ask questions and anyone on the committee will reply.
Dr. Baker, let me come back to you. You were the editor of the AORN Journal, I believe you mentioned in your opening statement when we started the presentation today. You are also an author of a series of books. You mentor many others in writing. You serve as faculty for writing courses. You develop these courses. So what advice would you give or would you have for those who are intimidated to write? Sometimes there's a little bit of trepidation around writing. But what advice do you have for those who might be a little intimidated to write their submission to the AORN Fellowship?
I think public speaking is right there around death and fear. Intimidation or fear of writing is a very real experience, and all of us have lived that. Ultimately, we have to overcome an imposter syndrome, just like we did when we graduated from nursing school and took care of patients as a nurse and on our own. Scared, but trusting that we can do this. We have the knowledge and we can do this. Writing isn't any different. We have to decide we can instead of finding ways to say we can't. You have done something that is significant and sustainable, and that has to be put into words and within a limited character count. The key? Write the draft and get others to help you edit and narrow the character count while retaining the critical content. Don't lose the content. Focus on what you are trying to say. Stick to the point. Get someone else to review for editorial purposes. Your message needs to be clear, concise, and focused. Be succinct, but don't sacrifice the key points. You and your sponsor, along with your leader, make up a team for your application. That includes the potential for editing support. Carol talked about this earlier in going back and forth related to what do you cut, what do you add, what do you clarify? Those are the kinds of things you have to think about. Then pay careful attention to the recommendation and edits. Keep in mind the specific question that you are answering in the application and address how your focused outcomes demonstrate significance and sustainability. Your 3 narratives and the 2 letters are all written to support your focused area, but they are not repetitive. I don't know how many times we've said that. However, it is true. Don't say the same thing. You're saying it from different perspectives. In addition, everything you write must be supported in your CV, which is what Larry was talking about. If something is mentioned in the narrative or letters, make sure it is included in the CV.
Thank you, Jordan. Great advice there. So we've talked a lot about the application and how to write it and what's required in an application. Larry, I have an additional question for you. Let's start motivating some of our audience today to get this work underway. You know, we've had great discussions about the pathway to fellowship in AORN today, but I'm gonna call your mind to the year 2000, where there was a movie that swept the country, where a young 12-year-old boy found his purpose in life and wanted to make the world a better place. We mentioned it earlier. I believe it was Joy Don who mentioned it, but that movie was called Pay It Forward. And I know that many of the folks in our audience today will remember it. So I'd like to ask you, now that you are a fellow of AORN, how will you continue to support the Association of Perioperative Nurses and pay forward an avenue for others to become fellows of this great professional organization?
Wonderful question and wonderful movie. I would suggest if you haven't seen it, please do see it. I certainly have found my purpose in life. I look forward to mentoring, coaching, and assisting members to apply for fellowship. I again repeat that I've had wonderful mentors, including several fantastic AORN member sponsors who hold either the FAORN or are a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. And I have to say that their support and encouragement were extremely inspirational, which allowed me to expand my thinking and subsequent submissions. They were a tremendous help, and my desire is to be one of those sponsors. I also wish to continue my service with the AORN Foundation in some capacity. You know, our foundation holds the highest GuideStar rating at the platinum level, and only 17% of nonprofits hold this status. And that highlights the high level of transparency, stewardship, and the impact our foundation makes in the world of perioperative nursing. So I want to continue to contribute to the foundation. And I look forward to paying it forward by being available at the Expo FAORN booth for many years to come to answer questions and provide encouragement. While it's a lot of work preparing all the materials needed for application towards becoming a fellow, again, we are here to help you.
Thank you, Larry. So I've got one final question, and David, I'm gonna flip back to you for this final question of our session today. You know, it's been said that great leaders do 3 things: they motivate, they inspire, and most importantly, they influence those around them. And I would argue that your track record of success as a chief nurse executive at UT Southwestern illuminates to all of us that you are, by definition, a great leader. So what motivational, inspirational, and influential message would you provide our audience today about becoming a fellow in the in the Association of Perioperative Registered Nurses?
Stuart, I think I would summarize this by saying your career is your responsibility. I've said this to many, many of my team members and some of my AORN colleagues over the years. It's incredibly important that every one of us intentionally thinks about how we individually want to grow and develop. This doesn't necessarily mean changing jobs or roles. People often think that's what I mean. That's not necessarily what it means. But it does mean that we shouldn't be the same next year or the years ahead as we are right now. What I see happen sometimes is that nurses don't intentionally think about their growth. And in some cases, they're expecting someone else to do it for them. I want all of our members, my colleagues, to create a vision for their own careers. For some of you, it may be in becoming a fellow of AORN. We get one life in all aspects: personal, physical, spiritual, and professional. think about the mark you want to make or the legacy you want to leave on the profession that you have chosen.
That's not motivational and inspirational and influential. I'm not sure what is. Thank you, David. And thank you all so much today. And special thanks to our incredible panelists who have shared their personal journeys to the FARN fellowship and attaining those credentials with us today. For those of you who are contemplating whether or not to submit an application, I would encourage you to envision your career path and to determine the mark you want to leave on perioperative nursing, as well as AORN, your professional association. The FARN credential will create a path for you that includes recognition as a national perioperative professional, and I'm confident it will augment who you are as a leader in your current work environment and across the profession, whether that be a researcher, someone in an administrative capacity, clinical practice, or education. Let me remind you all that the AORN website has resources, lots of resources that will be extremely beneficial to you. So I encourage you to visit www.aorn.com and research the FARN fellowship. And if you have any additional questions, you may also email AORN Fellows, that's AORN FELLOWS at AORN.org. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you at Expo in just a few short weeks. Thank you.